Hi, welcome to Raven Views the News. This is September 13th, and over the weekend, Suzanne and I participated in some 9/11 commemorative events. Suzanne, what event did you participate in?
Well, a couple of them. One was at the Field Museum where there was a commemoration exhibit, sort of a tribute to the heroes of 9/11 and the first responders and the people who had died. So it was very moving, emotional exhibit. And then I participated on Monday morning in a discussion sponsored by the Project for Civic Reflection here in Chicago at WBEZ, our local public radio station, was recording the discussion, and 30 community leaders came together to talk about 9/11 in our response. So it was much more of a, intellectual exercise.
Sounds like a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, it really was. It was very interesting. Part of the conversation was around the costs of violence. It was a lot about our response to the attacks and what that has cost us in terms of human life and resources.
Yeah, there's the financial cost,
Yeah.
which can be fairly easy to see, but there's also the human cost, the moral cost.
Yeah.
Of all of this. And one of the interesting questions that we explore here at the Raven Foundation is partly the moral cost. And what does it mean to respond to violence with our own violence? What does that do to our nation as a soul, I guess?
Right. Yeah, I know you and I talked a lot about this because mimetic theory has this kind of weird way of looking at conflict where mostly we talk about the origins of conflict in differences, like the reason that we were attacked was because they hate our way of life, that our ways of life are so incompatible.
They hate our freedom.
They hate our freedom, they hate everything we stand for, right? And so that's what triggered the violence, where mimetic theory says exactly the opposite, that real difference and distance protects people against conflict pretty obviously, because physically if you're not in the same space you can't fight.
Right.
But also spiritually and culturally, that the closer you get together, the more little differences prick at identity. And we were talking about some examples earlier that we came up with a lot.
One of the examples among, you should probably tell it, but one of the examples among women is that if you show up to a party and somebody else is wearing the same dress, it's the similarities there that cause the conflict.
Terrible discomfort. You want to leave the room.
My junior year of prom, my date wore the same dress as a senior who was at prom, and the senior at prom just got all upset.
Yeah.
She was physically upset, and you could tell.
Yeah.
She made it very apparent. So it's this similarity that causes these conflicts, and this happens among men as well, but it happens among nations too.
Right.
So it's our shared desire for the very thing that we say they hate us for, that we're having these conflicts. We're all after the same thing, which is the freedom to live our lives the way we want to live our lives, right? All in the name of some thing that we think is fundamentally different.
Yes.
But it's the same thing that we're all grasping after.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, what does violence do to us?
Yeah.
So the people who attacked us on 9/11 claim that their way of life was threatened by an American presence, globalization. Their way of life is threatened by globalization. We end up making the same accusation. Our way of life is now threatened by those who attacked us.
Right.
We have the same arguments for violence and we justify our violence with those
with this
same
argument.
arguments.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that we get very caught up in analyzing whose justification for violence is better.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that's just such a bad place to be, because, you know, you ask, what does violence do to us morally? I mean, what violence does is drown out all the justifications for it, right? If you're a victim of violence, and that's one of the things that I think we should be remembering about 9/11, which is how we felt to be a victim of violence. Mm-hmm. We did not care what reasons those folks were given for why they did what they did. We were going to make sure it never happened again.
Right.
There was no way we were inviting them to dinner.
Right.
And we didn't want to be friends with them. We wanted to wipe them off the face of the earth. We didn't care what they said. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter. The violence undermined if there was any worth or value in their argument, we couldn't hear it.
Right.
And I think we need to realize that when we use violence, the same thing happens to the victims of our violence. They don't care why we say we're doing what we're doing. It just don't matter. The violence is bigger and louder than any justification for it. Mm-hmm. And that's where we do become very much like our enemies. Mm-hmm. When we respond to violence with violence, the rhetoric dissolves and disappears, and what remains is the sameness of our methods, that we both agree that the method of violence is legitimate.
Yes. And all that's left is vengeance, violence, and vengeance and revenge.
Right.
So what's the way out?
Well, I am so glad you asked that question, because it is the question that we want people to take up in the peace circles. Mm-hmm. We really want to engage with what we see going on around the world, which is the ways to bring about change through nonviolent methods. And I really think that there are values that are worth elevating and worth standing up for and fighting for, but not fighting for in such a way that we diminish what they mean. Mm-hmm. Peace, security, freedom, democracy, they're all things that America stands for and that other people around the world want too. Mm-hmm. So how can we work together in a nonviolent way to bring about transformation in a world that is being globalized? These are the conversations we want to have in the peace circles.
Yeah. And more information can be found on the peace circles at our Be a Hero for Peace website. That's beaheroforpeace.info. And if you would like to start a peace circle, there's plenty of information there for you and topics that you can discuss. So, we hope you do that and let us know how it goes. Thanks.
Thanks.